What is up, Vegas Nation? It is Tuesday, right around noon. That means we are here live with you, answering any questions you may have about the Raiders and anything going on with the Las Vegas Raiders. We thank you once again. You can submit questions all week long through Facebook, through the Vegas Nation app, through FanZone, through our social medias, anywhere that you may find any of us and interact with any of us from the Review Journal's Raiders coverage team. And sending questions throughout the week, we'll be able to try to answer them here on Tuesdays. This time it is me that you have with you. So whether it's myself or Vinny Bonsignor, Heidi Fang, Sam Gordon, any of the team that regularly checks in here, Ed Graney as well, make sure you reach out to us and let us know what you want to know about up on social media, and we'll talk about them here on Tuesdays. A couple of questions from social media this week that we'll start with, and we can get into what is going on out there with mini camps. We were out there last Wednesday. We'll be out there again tomorrow. So make sure you check out the coverage up at the Review Journal and Vegas Nation. First, will the 17-game season and expanded playoffs be a long-term deal? That is from Fernando, loyal listener, loyal guy who checks in all throughout the week on social media with us, follows along. So we thank you, Fernando. Yeah, it is. This is going to happen for sure. This is going to be something that goes on for a while now. In fact, it could get even more expanded. I think this is just the first step. 17 games was step one. They eliminated one preseason game, so it's really the same amount of games, although the starters will actually play in this regular season game, unlike the preseason game they got rid of. But yeah, the owners saw an opportunity to expand the schedule, expand the amount of games that actually meant something, amount of games that are offered to networks, as they had that TV deal coming up this week. Sorry to mute that feed there. I don't know if you heard that. Sorry. So yeah, it's going to be a long-term deal for sure. This is a huge money-making opportunity for the league with that extra game, and it's only going to get bigger from here. An 18th game would, of course, net more than a 17th game would. So expect that to happen as well down the road. So 17-game schedule, yes, is going to be a long-term deal. Let's see who we have up here. Try to read this through. Are the Raiders in the running for Julio Jones? I hear they want a number one and players. So, first of all, I think in any trade scenario where you see some of these things mentioned, the first step would be to not necessarily look at what the team is asking for. Sometimes, a team will be fairly clear on what it's going to take to get a guy away. The Falcons did kind of leak out there. I'm gonna assume it was the Falcons because of how these things work. But the rumors out there about a first round pick for Julio Jones and maybe potential players as well. That sounds like it came from the Falcons. So that would make some sense. Yes, of course the Falcons want a number one and some players. They probably want multiple number ones and some players. Doesn't mean they're going to get it. And I wouldn't expect that they would. I think the haul for Julio Jones is going to be much less significant than you would think for a player of his caliber. Listen, he has an unfavorable contract. He's 32 years old. And yes, he's been able to play through a lot of injuries and be on the field. So it looks like, when you look at his games played, he hasn't missed a whole lot of games, even though it might seem that way. I know a lot of fantasy players will tell you Julio Jones is out all the time. Not necessarily true, but I think the reason that he has that reputation is because he is questionable every single week. He just plays so hard and so physical. He's often going to be listed as injured and, questioned whether he'll be able to play. So he's actually played more often than you might think, but there is that injury concern with Julio Jones. And again, 32 years old as a wide receiver. His better days are certainly behind him. Who knows how much longer he has? He's still an elite player, but there are all those factors to consider in addition to that insane contract right now that you still have to pay out. So I don't think it's going to be a huge haul for Julio Jones. Could you get him for a third? Perhaps. I mean, now we're getting closer. Maybe it's a second. Maybe it's a second and some, some incentives to maybe make it a little bit better. But I don't think it's a pure first-round pick for Julio Jones or multiple first-round picks or multiple players, that sort of thing. It's not going to happen that way. So, I think the Raiders are going to be interested in Julio Jones. I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in Julio Jones. doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the ones that get him or the ones that make that deal. But I would say on the surface, it looks like the kind of moves the Raiders would make. Uh, Julio Jones is the kind of toy that John Gruden loves for his offenses. So I would expect that you would look at this and say, yeah, the Raiders are going to be involved. They're going to at least ask around. They're going to try to find out what it would take. Um, I don't believe, and I know this is tough because it's a weird one. I think Julio Jones is incredible. I've always been a Julio Jones, supporter, a fan, a guy who thinks his talent is otherworldly. I think he's a tremendous player. I don't think he's the right fit for the Raiders for multiple reasons. First of all, yes, they got rid of Nelson Aguilar, but this is still a receiving core that I think is more than good enough for the Raiders to move forward and to be a very, very good football team. We saw last year how good that offense could be without a weapon like Julio Jones. Um, I think the offense is the receiving core is getting better and better, and is more than good enough around Derek Carr to be successful. So I don't think it's the kind of investment with that kind of contract. I don't think it's the kind of investment that you make as the Raiders. I think the Raiders would be much wiser if they were going to make splashes like that to go out and look in the defensive market, maybe even potentially offensive linemen. I know they like what they've done on the offensive line, but they could still make a potential splash in that area if they were going to do so. But I think defense is where you go spend money like this, spend capital like this. I don't think Julio Jones is a guy that you go out and say, "Hey, that's the guy that changes the Raiders' fortunes." The Raiders, have many needs. Isn't necessarily one of them. As good as I think Julio Jones is, but again, he is a guy he's the type of guy that John Gruden seems like he might love to go out and get. Not giving up anything higher than a second round draft pick. I'd like to give up a fourth or fifth, including another wide receiver. Why not Hunter Renfrow and a fifth? We're gonna have to pay soon. Sure, but Hunter Renfrow is not gonna snatch that kind of a contract either. Hunter Renfrow is going to get paid, in a couple of years, but it's not going to be on that level. And you also have to think in these situations. One of the things I love about trade scenarios that are proposed, oftentimes both in media and in fans and a lot of people that are really desirous of getting certain players of like, what about this, and this for this player? Well, sure, but you also have to consider what the other side would be interested in. Would the Falcons be clamoring to get another wide receiver? Like, yeah, they're going to need to fill the role, but really the reason Julio Jones is available is because they have so many weapons on offense. I don't necessarily know that would be the kind of player that they would want. So, yeah, you have to consider those things as well. Uh, why is Josh Jacobs not in camp? This is a question that's also coming in. Thank you guys. A lot of questions this week up on YouTube, and I'll try to get to these. We'll get to camp in a second here. To answer that question about Josh Jacobs potentially not being in camp. A lot of Julio Jones questions here though, so we're trying to get through and see what they are. One example, when 4 teams put an offer for a player like Julio, can the team know the other team's offer so we can offer more to get that player? I do enjoy that question. I like it a lot, and it makes a lot of sense as a question for sure. Like, why not do it publicly and say, hey, here's the 4 offers. What is the team going to accept? Um, I, I think that would make things a lot more interesting to follow and watch, but it's just not how it works. First of all, it doesn't work well. Excuse me, it doesn't work well for a team that's looking to shop a guy. Like they don't want other teams to know what they're seeking, because it kind of affects the trade market a little bit. And you would say, well, then it keeps offers down because it's going to be public, and teams don't want to go crazy with offers, and then you also you don't want to have a team just barely beating it. I think oftentimes you acquire a player for a lot more than the second best team asked for, not just slightly more, where somebody could just barely beat that. So I think it makes things a lot more interesting. I think it'll make a lot more fun to watch these discussions and these trade scenarios. But yeah, I just don't think uh, that would work out well for a lot of teams. A lot of teams would not enjoy that part of it. if they were to try to make things public like that, which I feel like is it'd be a game changer, but maybe not in the best way for a lot of teams. So I don't think you would see public uh, revealings of what teams have offered in trade scenarios. I don't hold your breath for that, even though I love the question and I love that possibility down the road. Why is Josh Jacobs not in camp, even though it is not mandatory? Anything to do with Kenyon Drake? So, for those that don't know, yes, minicamp started last week. A lot of people said Wednesday was the first day of minicamp. It wasn't. They were actually in there the day before, but Wednesday is the day that media is allowed there. So that's kind of the day that we all had circled as like the first day because we were allowed in and got to see the practices and see what they were going through. Not a whole lot of hitting, obviously no pads, so a lot of just walking through and learning new systems, learning refresher course for some of the guys that were there last year, but learning new systems for a lot of guys defensively that are with Gus Bradley for the first time here. So you get to see a little bit of just going through the progressions and seeing where guys are. Now, there was rumors that Raiders were not going to participate in voluntary minicamp, and most teams around the league were going to join in and not participate in the voluntary minicamp. There was even a letter that the Raiders players signed, one of several teams that said they weren't going to be there because the union. Let's just go back and explain this. Why the union is trying to make changes to the way the offseason operates. They're trying to have more of an offseason. They're basically saying that there's really no offseason. You get finished, you stay in the facility, you have mini camps, you have OTAs, you have mandatory mini camps, and then all of a sudden it's training camp and you haven't had an off season. You've been there all the time. You have no break. You don't get the body a chance to heal. And what they're saying is last year this was forced to happen because of COVID, where there was no off-season activities, nobody could come into the facility, and play on the field wasn't really impacted that greatly. Injuries were down because bodies were healed, according to them again. And so they want to make changes to the way the offseason program goes. So they kind of asked players not to participate. One of the big things that happened, though, was that the Broncos had a couple of players working out off-site. They didn't come into the facility. They were hurt significantly and ended up being cut. So a lot of the players looked at that and said, "Wait a minute, there's no protections if you're training off facility," and so they kind of looked at that and said it's not really right for the players. There's no protections there. It's better for us if we're in the facility to go in there. The other aspect of that, besides the potential for getting hurt, is that once you see one or two teams come in, all the teams say they're not coming in, but one or two do, and the player starts to look around and say, wait a minute, this is not a competitive advantage for us. We're at a competitive disadvantage by not being there when all these other teams are. While they are, able to be in the facility and work through this, we're not there. And so the solidarity kind of went away because you looked around and said, well, if they're there, we're going to be there. And so that kind of made that happen. So 83 of 89 players on the roster for the Raiders were on the field for camp. And I do want to make that clear because being on the field is not necessarily the same as being there, because I do believe I think there was at least one report, but I do believe there was at least 3 players that were at the facility but not on the field for various reasons, but whether it be medical or otherwise, that they were there. They just weren't out on the field where the media could see them. So I want to make sure to note that just because you weren't there doesn't mean you weren't at the facility. Josh Jacobs, however, as according to this question, why is he not in camp? I don't believe he was one of the guys that was there. I do believe he was one of 3 players at least that were not at the facility for voluntary minicamp. We'll see what happens later on here with these next 2. Next week will be the last one today. Or excuse me, this is Tuesday. Tomorrow will be the second availability for media, and then mandatory camp will be in the middle of June. So you do expect him here. Why isn't he here? I don't know. That's his personal decision. Again, it's voluntary. You don't have to be. The vast majority of players are, but he is not. Does it have to do with Drake? I don't think so. I believe it's his own things, but again, we don't know why he is not here. Running backs, we know in particular, have a huge toll taken on them during the season, and maybe he's standing with other running backs and saying, "Hey, this is the time of year we don't need to be putting a strain on our body." So we'll find out. I'm sure that Josh Jacobs will explain, or somebody from Josh Jacobs' camp will talk about why he is not there right now. And again, tomorrow we'll be up at Raiders facility, and maybe he's there tomorrow, so we'll find out where that goes. When will some of the rookies speak to the media, like Trayvon Merring, etc.? Uh, I think it could be soon. Um, I think it's pretty clear that they had the veterans and kind of the team leaders a little bit speak last week, and we'll get more and more of these guys through Zoom. The problem for me, I don't think it's a problem for the players. I don't know if it is a problem for you guys as media. The problem with these Zooms now is you're not in the locker room, so you don't get to kind of decide who you go talk to. It's whoever the team decides for you to talk to, and they have not made those guys available just yet. So hopefully, again, that happens very soon. Would love to hear from Trayvon in particular, and obviously Alex Leatherwood, some of the other rookies. We did hear from them after they were picked, so we got to see a little bit of they were on Zoom and just kind of talked about their feelings on becoming Raiders. But what is it like settling in? Or how are you learning the systems, that sort of thing? What's it like to be here in Vegas? A lot of the players said they had never been to Vegas. So, those kind of questions we'd love to certainly ask them. But again, with no locker room access still, it's just kind of you're at the mercy of who the Raiders decide to put out there in front of the cameras. And so far, has not been those guys, but I do expect that to happen fairly soon. There's been definitely a lot of interest from the media for sure. I know when you can put in some requests for who you talk to, and a lot of people asking for those guys. We actually had a really, really intriguing question that I wanted to get to, and it had been the subject of a lot of online talk, I think, this week. So I think that's where the question came from. But Mayor Vegas posted this up on Twitter. I don't want to shortchange it though, so let me just give um, the question, which was, who is the second best player on the roster? If you, of course, assume Darren Waller is the best. Um, I think it's a very, very good question. But like I said, I want to give this the time it deserves. I think we'll do this a week when we don't have a lot of questions, because we had a ton of questions come in from you guys this week. And really, really appreciate it. Make sure you keep those coming every single Tuesday up at noon. Come check this out. Be a part of the stream, whether it's myself or one of the other people from the coverage team with the Review Journal and Vegas Nation. Will be here to answer your questions. I want to run this by the other folks as well. Maybe we'll do like a group podcast or a group video chat with you guys and kind of get to this one, because I do think it's a really good question. I think you're going to get varied answers from all the different folks who do it. I think you can ask a lot of people that cover the team, and you get different answers from all of them. So I do like that question. Who is the second best player on the Raiders right now? Apologize, I know I told you on Twitter we get to that, but we will. I think we just owe it a little bit more than just kind of squeezing it in here at the end of the broadcast, because we are set with a bunch of questions that we got in. Again, thank you guys so much. Make sure you send them throughout the week through social media or through Vegas Nation, however you reach us, Facebook, the app, anywhere that you can send in questions. Please do so. This will get better and better as we get more and more questions to answer, and maybe do it more often with more of the team, and really get into some of these questions a little bit deeper that you guys have. But you guys did a great job today. We really appreciate that. Again, we'll be back next Tuesday. You can check us out on the podcast throughout the week as well, and full coverage from Wednesday's media availabilities for the voluntary minicamp. We'll see how much of attendance is still going on this week. I expect it to be a little bit better than even last week when it was 83 out of 89. But find that out at the Review Journal and Vegas Nation. For everybody behind the scenes here that does such a tremendous job to bring this to you, we really, really appreciate it. Again, there's another question. Do you think Carr gets an extension? We will add that one for next week. All right. Thank you, Raider Way, so much. You did a great job with the questions this week. Appreciate that very much. For the team here at the Review Journal and Vegas Nation, we appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you again real soon, including next Tuesday right here with the Vegas Nation Fan Zone.